Welcome to Soul Night Live number 51, special daytime edition. My guest today is Styx drummer Todd Sucherman. So how have you been spending your days lately?
Look, it's horrific, but I consider myself incredibly fortunate and lucky, and that's not lost on me. I mean, I'm healthy. I'm able to stay at home, and keeping my wife and daughter safe and healthy, and working on projects. I've been very thankful for sessions that have been coming in, helping to keep me busy. So all in all, it's while it is a horrific time, it's also been a very proactive and a creative time as well, because hopefully we'll never have this kind of time again. So I'm trying to find the gifts and the silver linings and everything. Reading a couple books when I can, which is hard when you've got a 6-year old, and just trying to keep myself in shape back there.
Sure.
Not only in shape for when the storm is over, but um, I feel like I've aged more in the last 8 months or so because I'm not playing 4 or 5 shows a week.
Sure.
I keep myself busy and in shape back there, but it's not the same thing as playing a 2 hour show in 100% humidity and 90 degree.
Sure.
You can't take a break in the middle of Renegade just because you're tired. You got to
Right.
you
Exactly.
gotta keep
Back,
soldiering on.
yeah.
So that's basically what's been going on, man. Is trying to stay in shape, trying to go through some basics of the playing, trying to uh, re re-solidify things, look at things from different angles, and hopefully just getting better and maturing with my choices.
Sure. Very good. Very good. Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day today to chat with us and
No
let us kind of
problem, man.
catch up on what you've been up to lately and talk about your amazing career. Um, I wanted to First, I wanted to ask. I just saw the recent video you guys did for Too Much Time on My Hands. I was wondering if you
Mhm.
could tell us a little bit about what inspired that and who it was for.
Well, that came from I believe from the Pittsburgh Steelers organization. For a long time, Renegade has sort of been their unofficial theme song. And it's played late in the game when a crucial play needs to, like, they choose when they play it, and the screens go black. And I've witnessed it a few times at Heinz Field. It's hysteria. So there's been this unique relationship with the town of Pittsburgh, the Steelers, and the band Styx from that song. So they asked us to do that for the jumbotron, and I guess they aired it. I haven't been keeping up with football, but I guess there was a game the other night, and they played it on the jumbotron, and that's what it was for. So besides being on YouTube and on socials, or whatever, but that was really the invite and the genesis to do that and film and record it.
Okay, well, that's a great tune. I think that's maybe the first Styx tune I really loved once I realized who you guys were when I was like 12 or something.
Well, I
Somewhere
mean,
in there.
I think I was yeah, I was about 11 or so when that came out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And your crew has kind of put together a new cookbook. Can you tell us a bit about that? That's kind of a different angle. Great idea.
Well, it is, and it was all them. If you travel, one of the perks is enjoying culinary delights from other locations, and a lot of them are very they're they cook when they're at home. They're really into cooking. My drum tech Paulie, is an Italian guy from New York, and he always has. So he's cooking out. They got grill stuff, under the bus, and he always sends homemade spaghetti sauce to everyone. So there's a whole culinary aspect to it, and so they decided to put this thing together themselves They've sold a ton of them, which is great, and all the money goes to support the crew. Um, so that was entirely up to them. The idea was theirs. They put it together themselves, and that was it. I just have to mention, not to go negative for a second, but someone had commented and then pulled it off my Facebook when I had a little promo for the book, and someone called it a money grab.
Oh,
Like, dude, you are utterly clueless.
you
Like,
don't not know what these people have been going through this year? I mean, come on, wake up.
yeah, I mean, our crew is the best of the best. I mean, I've had my drum tech since 2002. Who keeps a drum tech that long? Very few. So they're the best in the biz, and they're great human beings, and they've been out of work since March. And this goes to benefit them and their families, and it's Christmas time for them too.
Sure.
So I think it was a really great idea. I bought a couple, and I can't wait to get it.
Are these available on your website, the Styx website?
It's available on the Styx website, and it's
Okay.
called Pieces of Eight, ATE.
As a, we
And
ate that. That's
they
right.
had, yeah, they took part of the Pieces of Eight original album work, and then had like a stone fork and a plate coming out of there. It's really ingenious.
Yeah, I always thought that was a frying pan hanging from her ear there instead of an earring. It was something shaped like that.
Yeah.
Maybe this will inspire some other bands. I was thinking Kansas could do one. Wouldn't it be funny if a band that's all about wheat did a gluten-free cookbook? Got it. Either that or else it's nothing but bread recipes. I don't
Good
know.
work. Good work. Who knows?
Yeah, but that's a great idea. So y'all check it out and pick one up. I'm sure there's some great stuff in there.
I mean, my drum tech alone, whatever he put in there, is going to be worth the price of admission for that book. So
Excellent. That's a great idea. Um, so I was wondering if we could kind of go back to the early years for you. I know you grew up in a musical family. I believe your dad was a drummer. Is that right?
that is correct.
So I usually ask people who was your first drumming influence, but I would guess in your case it would be your dad. Is that right?
Oh, clearly, yeah. I mean, he put himself through med school playing drums, and was a professional drummer. His gigging slowed down when I was a little kid. Um, he was 50 when I was born, and my mom was 30. So it was kind of a different generation. But my dad had been playing in nightclubs since he was 13 in the 30s. So that was absolutely my first love. I was enamored, enthralled, scared, and in love with the drums from the time I was an infant. And I loved the role it played in music. And it was really, the greatest gift to be the youngest in a musical family. My older brothers played bass and piano, respectively, and I filled out the rhythm section. So we grew up playing music. We'd throw a ball around or go for a swim, come in and play. So it was really, the head start that I was afforded is, was the greatest gift.
Sure. And what was like some of the music that you fell in love with just around the house when you were a kid before you could even go buy a record of your own?
Well, that's the thing that, again, is a gift coming from a musical family, and having an older parent. Because one of the first records that I loved was Basie Plays Hefty, kind of Basie with Sonny Payne on drums.
Mhm.
And I would sit with my Mickey Mouse record player, like as a infant in diapers,
I had one of those.
you know. And the other was Chicago too. It's
Oh,
Danny
awesome.
Surfing, one of my greatest heroes. So that music is just seared, especially that record, into every fiber of my being.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a record player in every room, so there could be Led Zeppelin or Kiss or Mozart or Miles Davis or literally anything. My older brothers were musicians, and they had friends that were older that were musicians. So they'd come home with records. Hey, what's that? What's this? Check this out. And certain flashes, like I remember seeing Genesis Seconds Out, that album cover for the first time.
Yeah.
What's that? So it was a marvelous way to grow up, because it was music. It wasn't so compartmentalized and labeled like things are
Sure.
now. I mean, obviously I knew the difference between things, but it didn't carry whatever the stigma of, oh, it's that sort of thing, you know,
Right. Yeah.
when
Well,
you're a kid.
speaking of labels, I want to as well ask this one while I'm thinking about it. Styx and progressive rock. Where do you stand on that? They kind of get tossed in that prog pile from time to time, but I think it kind of depends on the song.
It depends on the song, and it also depends on one's perception of prog. If everything is, 12-minute songs with 16 different time signatures in it, if that's your definition, you're not going to accept
Right.
Styx into the prog category. But if you accept, um, some of the sounds and some, whether it's, the middle section of Castle Walls, or the pomposity of Lord of the Rings, or even looking at a song like "Fooling Yourself," which was a radio hit
Sure.
that has three different time signatures, has a keyboard solo in 7/8 that has that Salisbury Hill style 7/8 that the layperson doesn't even realize that it's in an odd time.
Right.
It's
It
a
just
natural flow to it.
flows so nice. Right.
So it really depends, but I would say that they were a rock band with progressive leanings, and later they had more pop rock leanings.
Sure.
Say from Cornerstone on.
Yeah, and that's a typical path that a lot of their peers followed as well. Just, as the 80s approached, everybody kind of tightened things up a bit.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
and I still think of Genesis as a prog rock band, even though they did, Invisible Touch or what, you know what I mean?
sure.
There's bands evolve and do different things, even though some of the fan base or fan bases in general want something to stay the same way forever.
Sure. And, you know, damned if you do, damned if you don't when it comes to all of that anyway. So just do what you do from your heart and let the chips fall where they may is what I think.
Yeah.
You can't really think about it too much. Um, so going back, what were some of the first concerts you took in? You remember seeing as a teen? Anybody really just blow your mind?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wasn't a teen, I was 6 or 7.
Oh, that's awesome.
I saw Chicago when Terry Kath was still alive. That was my first show.
Oh, wow,
Chicago,
that's
and
awesome.
it blew my mind. I remember on a family vacation down in uh, Walt Disney World. The band Starbuck was playing.
Oh,
I said,
yeah,
Where
sure.
Moonlight Feels Right.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure. That has an amazing marimba solo, man.
I mean, Bo. God, what was his name? Bo.
Bo, yeah, you're right. I can't remember his last name, but
I have a picture of me with him. I can't believe I'm spacing on his name right now. But yeah, I mean is there more virtuosic marimba solo and pop music than that one? I don't think so. And actually, that whole record is super, super just dripping in large mustache 70s-ness that record is. There's some cool things on it, and maybe it was because I had the record when I was a kid and I saw them, but there's some cool stuff on that first
oh,
Moonlight Right record.
there's some great music. I actually did an episode about yacht rock about a month ago with the bass player from the Yacht Rock Review, and it was definitely on the list. We went down the list of about 100 yacht rock albums, and
No, I mean, well, here's the funny thing. I'm not dissing yacht rock because I love it, but there's certain songs from childhood that I didn't dig, or even my teenage years that I didn't dig, that I hear now as an adult, or a, aging like a fine wine adult, and I hear it and I go, "Damn, that's actually really good." Certain things that I totally dismissed. Um, some of the yacht rock stuff. I mean, obviously not Steely Dan and da stuff like that. But there's certain things that you're like, oh, of course that was Jeff Porcaro on that song. It feels
sure,
great.
right,
Um,
exactly.
like the big Leo Sayer hit.
Um,
And I Need You. Like that was an immediate like off in the radio when I
sure,
was a kid.
so
And
drippy.
and I just finished the Robin Flan's Jeff Porcaro book. Um, and there's a discography that's just my God, if just pick D, every artist that he ever played with D, that's a career, much less the other 25 letters
I
of the
can
alphabet.
imagine. It's kind of like here's the book and here's the list of who he played with. Right?
It's astonishing. So anyway, he played drums on that, and I went back and listened to it, and it was just like the drumming on that is a masterpiece, and I just completely wrote that song off as a kid. Like, nope, hate this. Boom. You
Yeah,
know,
you know,
oh, Aerosmith, there we go.
there you
Okay,
go.
cool. You know, you know,
Yeah, it's more like it. Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you. And yeah, there's lots of, back in the 70s, even the poppy stuff was so well put together, so many great tones. It's almost like all the cheesy tones hadn't been invented yet. So everything kind of aged really nicely.
disco, right? I I dismissed that. I didn't want anything to do with it, and I was gigging. I was gigging since I was 6 years old. So like in those years, I had to learn a bunch of those songs because you played those at bar mitzvahs and weddings and whatever.
I'm sure.
And I was always like, ugh.
Four on the floor.
But whenever one of those songs comes on now, I'm like, geez, listen to that bass line. Listen to the string uh, uh, arrangement. Listen to the groove.
Yeah,
When you're a kid, maybe sometimes you want a little bit more, fireworks and stuff like
I
that. And
agree. Yeah.
you don't enjoy the subtleties and the nuance of taste. And like, oh yeah, you think you think this sucks? Play that groove like that for 4 minutes.
Sure, exactly. I had a friend that was in a dance band, and he said, trying to play the bass line to YMCA consistently is harder than a lot of prog. And I was like, I don't know.
Well,
Those octaves can wear your hand out. I admit that.
yeah, having played, a thousand weddings in my youth, and my wife Taylor is a brilliant singer who was in Brian Wilson's band for
Oh yeah,
12 years, and she did her,
awesome.
for years of weddings and corporate parties and stuff like that. We always talk about how band leaders play a lot of songs too fast. It's like they think that, oh, if we really rock this out, it's going to pack the dance floor. But certain things lose their charm at different tempos. It
Oh,
becomes a different thing.
sure. And just listening to some live stuff from the '70s, it's kind of like, were you guys doing a lot of blow that night? Damn, that tempo's off the chart. And it's just like you reach a point where you just screw up the groove by going too fast.
Well, to take a song like Dancing Queen, that is so slow, and every band lead in the world thinks, no, that song's it's slow as hell, but it has a pulsating thing that it just works. And play that song any faster than that, and you've got yourself a wedding band. But if your band nails it at that groove, you got yourself a friggin' hot band.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Adrenaline has its way with you on stage. Any tips for keeping it from letting you get too fast?
Yeah, if it feels too slow and easy, it's probably just right.
That's good news. That's good advice. Yeah.
If anything, and because look, I grew up with a tendency of playing on top, and I play in a band that has a tendency to play on top. So it's really has become a goal. It's been very prevalent for me with walking that tightrope of time, because I don't want them to feel like this is what's going on. Is this feels boring? And if those guys, if there's a particular night where they're kind of pushing it, I have to gauge how far I can pull them back. Because if I do the thing where like no dudes, it's back here, and I'm almost a little sarcastic with pulling them back, what the audience perceives is it sounds like the drummer's tired and the drummer can't keep up, as opposed to oh, the guys, everyone's playing on top. So I have to try to ride that right in the middle and let them know, like, okay, you guys are getting a little excited, or let's just hang it back here. If it feels slow and sexy, it's probably stands a chance to be slow and sexy. I've seen Led Zeppelin cover bands, and the quarter note is nowhere near as fat as when Zeppelin played it, so it sounds like a friggin' cover band.
Sure.
Doesn't matter how good the singer is, doesn't matter how the guitarist gets the same tones. It kind of sucks because it's da 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 ga da 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 ga da 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 ga da. It's not da 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 ga da 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 ga da da
Didn't
ga
get it.
ga
Yeah.
ga oh. It's slow as hell, and that's why it feels like a friggin' Mack truck is coming down the highway to hit you
Yeah.
instead of a dog humping your leg.
Big difference. Big difference.
Different.
Definitely. Alrighty. Little back to your early years. Tell me, you were in wedding bands and other corporate bands. Was that mostly through your teens before you went to Berkeley, or?
Yeah, I mean, I was really fortunate to, again, through being the youngest in the family, my older brothers paved the way. They started playing with other musicians that were older, and then I would get pulled into what was going on. So, yeah, I mean, pretty much all um, through high school, most weekends I had a tux on, and was gigging somewhere. Every summer from the time, so when I graduated eighth grade until I got back from my 1 year at Berkeley, so that would have been 6 summers in a row. I played at a resort in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, about an hour north of Milwaukee, and it was, you know, it was a whole show band thing with a nightclub, a big nightclub that you could fit 400 people in there, and it was 6 nights a week. Older musicians, and there was, comedians from the, guys that were in their 60s and 70s back in the 80s. So
Sure.
they had charts that were old and yellow from the 50s with drummers' notes on it. I mean, that was the best education I ever got because it was reading. The horn section, you screw up the kicks, you got guys that are 30 years older than me turning around, giving me the stink eye. Singers, jugglers, dancers, magicians, variety shows that span decades of music. It was a fantastic education, and I appreciate all the musicians who tolerated my youthful exuberance on the gig, and I probably played too loud, but that's where I was at.
Sure. What kit were you playing back then? What was like your first good one, I guess?
Well, actually, I could pull around here. I'm going to unplug you for a second.
You still got it, huh?
Well, here I'll give you a little tour right here. This was my first kit. It's my father's last and my first. It's a Slingerland 1969 with an 18-inch bass drum. Very rare to have the jazz bass drum.
Yeah, pretty
So
sweet.
I learned how to play on that till I was 10. Hope I don't make you throw up here. Sorry, the place is a mess here, as I said. And then this white Sonar kit was my main kit from through all those summers.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I had that kit from 1980 to 88. And then I'll come around here, this stair wall. And then this Sonar Light Rosewood kit was my main kit from 1988 to 1995.
Okay. So that
So
was that right before you got with Styx. You were playing that one.
yes, I had the first time I played with them, I used a designer series kit that I used on the '96 tour. I ended up selling that kit. There's the main kit right now, the Pearl Masterworks,
Beautiful.
and I got the Phil Collins Keith Moon tribute 1978 premiere.
Oh man, that's awesome. Wow.
So just a quick little tour of the room.
Oh wow, what a room. I mean, you've got like one of every kind of snare available there, don't you?
Well, yeah, there's it's a bit of a sickness, but it's a fun sickness. I think there's about 116 snare drums in this room.
And I bet they're all awesome. There's no cheap shit back there.
There's no dog in the bunch. I have sold ones that are haven't been my favorites, but there's a story behind everyone in a way. Um,
Sure, it's like a guitar player. It's like, why do you need 50 guitars? It's like, well, they all sound different. They're not the same.
well, yeah, I mean, and also for me, like if I come in here, not only do I enjoy picking the right gear for a track I'm, excuse me, recording, but sometimes I might come out here and what's coming out of me is not really happening. Change out a snare drum, change out a ride cymbal, a pair of hi-hats, something like that. Or go to another kit. And all of a sudden I'm traveling down a new road that I didn't know I was going to be traveling down that day. Or I'll be inspired to do something like, I'm playing like some swampy thing in 6/8 or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, so I like that. And for me, where are you? Where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Topeka, Kansas, an hour from Kansas City. I'm a Midwestern guy, and I've lived in Atlanta for the past 25 years.
Okay. All right. So I grew up in Chicago, and there was
Okay.
two main drum shops that were both a couple doors down from each other on Wabash Avenue. And my father's practice was just a couple blocks away from there. So on some Saturday afternoons when he worked half days, I'd go down with him, and then we'd go to Drums Limited and Frank's Drum Shop. And both of these places were like old school. Frank's in particular, where you get in the elevator and there'd be some little elevator operator, old guy, like out of a
Oh,
David
yeah.
Lynch movie, you know.
That's
And you get up on, I think it was the fourth floor, and the elevator doors would open, and it was like the reveal in Willy Wonka, where they walk in for the
sure.
first time, just floor to ceiling drums and timpani and chimes and gongs, and you didn't know where to look first. It was friggin' magic. So I think if I were to psychoanalyze myself, I kind of wanted to create that sort of temple for myself when I come out here and I walk in this room. It has that same sort of uh, feeling.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's amazing just from a distance. Wow. Um, so Danny Seraphine, obviously a biggie for you from your early years. Who are some of the other rock guys that really caught your ear from an early age?
John Bonham I knew was immediately special. I got caught up in the Kiss thing, 75 to 78, pretty much for that. Um, and right, it was 79 that my brother came home with Journey Evolution, and I knew something was special with Steve Smith's playing on there. Even though it sounded kind of simple, there was stuff under the surface there that I knew was that he was amazing. And then one of my someone, oh yeah, Steve Smith, he played on the Jean-Luc Ponty record,
Yeah,
Enigmatic.
I think he was
Here, check this out.
fresh out of Pawnee when he got in Journey. So yeah,
So that record to me was sort of like that was my fusion Bible because I had heard Lenny White and Billy Cobham and some things that just I didn't know what the hell was going on. I didn't know what that was, but there was something about Steve's drumming on this record that was like a Rosetta Stone for me. I was able to decipher and hear other things, hear sticking articulations, and oh, that's what that is. And then can go back and hear Romantic Warrior and go, oh, that's what Lenny White's doing there, or hear Billy Cobham and go, oh, that's kind of because it was all coming from that 70s thing. There was that whole that stew that was happening
sure.
there.
How
You
about
know,
the prog guys? Obviously, Phil Collins, you got that kit. You obviously love him.
Yeah, I mean, I went through the Rush phase in real time from like 2112 to Signals was kind of my Rush period, um, and so there was Neil, obviously um, Phil Collins, Bill Bruford. Um, I remember my brother handing me the two UK records that Terry Bozzio played on,
Oh yeah, yeah.
Night After Night Live and Danger Money.
Oh, love him.
That was like, okay, some of the other records I was listening to just went by the wayside. I mean, what the hell is happening here? And then I got turned on to Tony Williams. I'm kind of embarrassed to say I really wasn't hip to Tony Williams till I was maybe 15 years old or so. Um, and then when I heard Believe It, the new Tony Williams Lifetime, it was like, oh, that's where all these guys got all that stuff from. That's the source.
Exactly. Yeah, the kind of the mother, the fountainhead, I guess. Yeah. You know.
Yeah, so all the flam stuff and the blues, and and you're hitting cymbals without a bass drum in the middle of a pattern like that. Like that. Oh, they all love him. He's their guy. So to me, in a way, like my holy trinity would be Tony Williams with Vinnie Colaiuta and Steve Smith,
Now
and
you're
then
talking.
then you got offshoots of Terry Bozzio, Simon Phillips, and now you're talking okay now Stuart Copeland, Manu Cachet, Mark Brzezicki. Like there's all these different well then how can you forget about Steve Gadd or Peter Erskine or Jack DeJohnette or Elvin Jones? Roy Haynes. You get it's like this tree of things that all sprout out, and Steve Gadd and boom Jeff Porcaro, Dave Maddox. They're all this big party, in my mind.
No doubt. Okay. Let me grab a couple questions in the chat room here real quick. My friend Alex from New York says, can you ask Todd if you can, let me see, what do you say? So why wasn't One With Everything played on the Cyclorama tour, but you got around to it later?
Well, the Cyclorama tour proper was, in the summer, was a big tour with Journey and REO Speedwagon.
Okay, so shorter set than usual.
Yeah, I think we only had an hour to play, and to dedicate, 6.5 minutes to sort of a progressive song, for a progressive song, with only that amount of time, when you're going to be up against the hit blasts,
right?
Speedwagon and Journey.
Right, you gotta.
I don't think we were willing to take that step. I think that song finally got its due many years later when we toured with Yes, because we figured now here's a situation where we got to hang with those guys. Let's have that be in this set. Because if there's some people that are only coming to see Yes, and they're like Styx, all they could think of is, Mr. Roboto, they would hear that and all of a sudden
they'd be like, damn.
Oh, that's pretty good. So
what record's that on?
yeah, so I think that's one of the things, and for a long time, even after 2003, when that record came out, when we were on our own and we could play a 2-hour set in a theater or whatever, that song often was in the set. That among other songs danced in and out of the set, and I think we needed to do that. I mean, one thing when it's not lost on me how fortunate I am to be in a band that has hits, and there's certain songs that you have to play. So now you only have X amount of songs that you could possibly pull out.
Sure.
And do you, okay, we're going to take out Crystal Ball for a song that maybe 10% of the audience it will know. You have to risk that. Like, are we playing outside? Is it a festival? Or is it an outdoor show? Is it a hot summer night? Is it an indoor theater with red velvet seats? A lot of times the surroundings will help dictate the set. So I think that's how that went.
Well, I was going to ask about how you put the set together, and some of these songs you guys have probably played over 1,000 times. I'm wondering, how do you keep it fresh? And do you ever kind of like, I know a lot of bands, they kind of veer off the path as they play these songs for years and years and embellish. And then 10 years down the road, they listen to the record, they're like, God, we're really way off. But you guys aren't like that. You always kind of keep it pretty close to the record. So I'm just curious, playing these songs hundreds of times, how do you keep it fresh?
Well, to address that part about it is very easy to start forgetting what the actual songs were like. And I know the singers feel that because they get into a groove and then they hear the original and go, oh, I'm not singing it like that anymore. And look, some people like that. There's some, if you want like the Van Morrison experience where you never know what you're going to get, okay. But for the most part, people want to hear the songs that they know. They want to hear the melodies that they know, and they want to sort of relive what the music means to them. So for me, from my perspective, how I keep things fresh is I realize that there's people out there that have never seen me play drums before. There's people out there that have never seen the band before. And perhaps there's someone out there that has had their tickets for 4 months and it's like been the countdown and like tonight's the night, because I remember what that was like.
Sure.
Tickets
I still love that,
and it's whatever, and it's like I can't wait until September, and like September 4th is finally here. That's a big night, and I try to superimpose that energy that someone's feeling that. So if it's a night that I might feel a little sore, or it's like day 17 and number show 5 in a row, and it's very easy to let your thinking go in a not a negative way, but sort of, it's not a positive way.
But just kind of like, oh, here we go again. Kind of, you want to avoid that mindset.
Yeah, I mean, you want to avoid the Groundhog Day effect
Sure.
because there's been some times where I'm playing a song and I'll feel like, didn't we just play the song? Are we playing this twice tonight?
Right.
Because that was the night before. Because just things have a way of melding. So you really have to have a concerted effort to keep your thinking straight and keep your mental health straight. And then ultimately, you see the faces of the first few rows and what the music means to them. And then you could think, there might be someone out there who this is their favorite song and they used to drive around with their best friend and their best friend's no longer with us anymore. So whatever heavy movie is going on in their mind, like that's happening to a lot of people. And that's something that I don't take for granted. So I don't dick around with this stuff,
Sure.
because this stuff, it's heavy. It's a heavy experience. The music means something to people. So it's a privilege, and something I don't take lightly or for granted. Even though I can take myself lightly, um, but I don't take the job lightly.
Hey, you had mentioned the Yes tour. I'm a big Yes fan. Been a big Yes fan since I was about 12. Any memories of that tour to share? That
Oh yeah, you know, some English bands sometimes uh, feel they have that old school thing where like they're on the bill with another band, but it's like a rival gang. And it's not like, hey, we're all here together. Isn't this great? And
right,
what's good for you is good for me.
right,
There's a little bit of a standoffish thing, and they were all nice, but as is what something that our organization often does is somewhere in the tour after a couple weeks when there's a night off, we'll have, hey, we're going to have a band, crew, everyone, like a dinner somewhere on a night off.
sure, yeah,
And
social event.
yeah, everyone hangs, everyone has a couple drinks, and all of a sudden, everyone realizes, hey, this is fun. This isn't a us and them situation,
Yeah,
and like Chris Squire was great. He told fantastic stories. Alan White was a lovely guy. Steve Howe kind of loosened up because you wouldn't really see him very much. He
yeah,
traveled separately from the band. He had his own like driver, and he always had his hollow body in a case with him. And he came and went. He sort of came in and he went
right.
to all be there. Like that was sort of the ice breaking night, and we've done that with a lot of bands uh, through the years, and we did that with Def Leppard, who were great guys, and I sat with Joe Elliott, and we talked music, and it was clear, because I didn't know much about him, but it's clear that he's such a knowledgeable musicologist talking about all these things that he wasn't just like, hey, I'm like a good-looking frontman guy, and I'm the singer, and I'm the jerk. He was
Right.
like the
Right.
loveliest guy, and was like so into the music. So to have those experiences beyond just passing in the hallway or passing in catering, hello, hey, how you doing? A quick little chat, and that's it. To actually sit and have a meal and a couple drinks, that's really the best thing to do.
And you guys, how do you eat on the road? It's all catered in, specific to what each one of you wants each time, or is it?
The food never stops. That's the problem with being on the road. It's yeah. I mean, it depends on the gig, but normally, like a summer tour, there's catering. There's we have our stuff in the dressing room, and then there's normally some sort of after show spread, and then there's stuff on the bus. So it's I very often joke when we do shows on our own, where there's two sets and we take a little break. I holler about where's the mid-show meal,
Right.
you know, because there's food beforehand, and there's dinner, and then you get off the the stage, and there's like a full turkey dinner or a pasta spread or whatever. If we're in a town where there's like indigenous foods, like back in Chicago, there's could be Lou Malnati's and Portillo's or whatever. So it's the secret is to try to not gain 20 pounds every time you go out on a run.
Do you prefer to play on an empty stomach or pretty
No,
empty?
no, but I do like to eat about 2 hours
About
before
two
I
hours
play.
prior,
Like
not too soon.
90 minutes is the minimum.
Sure. Alrighty. So tell us a little bit about how you came to work. Well, first, I want to know about Brian Wilson. Love Brian Wilson. Seeing his Smile tour was one of my favorite concert experiences. I'm pretty sure Taylor was there that night.
She absolutely was. Yeah. What city did you see? In Atlanta? You see it?
Yeah, I saw him at Chastain Park here.
Okay.
The, the
Sorry,
typical.
sorry about the dB limit there.
I know. Well, if you could just be heard over the people that have season tickets that don't even know who you are that came to eat wine and cheese, then you're good to go.
Yeah, if one of the neighbors turned on their lawnmower, that would be louder than the sound at that place.
I know. Chastain has its moments. It's like you got to
Literally, it's
get close.
a lawnmower is over 95 dB, and that's their. I think it's like 91 or something like
Right.
that.
It's
Ridiculous.
like you don't want to upset the rich guy across the hill, you
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
every time I play there, I just know that the drums aren't in the PA. It's like playing like an outdoor party. Like
Pretty
whatever
much.
whatever I'm doing is actually what's audible.
It's really nice. It just the sound there is usually shitty. Once in a blue moon, I mean, Steely Dan sounded amazing there, but that's Steely Dan, you know. But yeah, not my favorite. But that was a great show when I saw Brian. And
Yeah, that tour. If you haven't seen the double DVD
oh,
back
I
with
have it. Oh,
DVD,
love it.
the California Dreamer and the Live Smile. Yeah, those are both phenomenal.
Yeah. So, were you on some of Brian's records, or did you just do some live dates with them, or what?
Yeah, no, I'm on I think 5 of Brian's records.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I did a couple songs on Imagination. I did everything but one track on Getting In Over My Head. I did everything but 2 tracks on the Gershwin record. I did one song uncredited on his on the Christmas record. Oh, and I did That Lucky Old Son. That's the one that I did everything on, and that's my favorite one.
Oh, that's a good one. The one with the oranges on the cover, I
Right.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great record. Very cool. So, can you share a few memories of just working with Brian and what it's like?
Um, Brian, he well, I'll
Um,
I'll tell the story about the Gershwin record because what happened with that one was the musical director on that was Paul Mertens, and he came in with basically these Gershwin charts, the way that you'd read something at a wedding or a lead sheet.
sure.
How we would play the song traditionally, da da da, and then we'd start playing, and then Brian would start telling every one of us what to do, and where at bar 12, like you come in, like you lay out, and so by the end of 90 minutes, we had a whole new arrangement that didn't exist. And then we recorded live, no click track, as a band, and that was a fantastic way to do it. I kind of felt, hey, this is the way we used to make records.
Sure.
So Brian would always come up with one or two things that would kind of blow my mind. I remember he did this in the Getting In Over My Head record, City Blues, which Eric Clapton plays on. He's like, okay, Todd, when you get to the outro, play for 8 bars, ride eighth notes on the floor, Tom, and then go to the ride cymbal for 8 bars, and then go back to floor, Tom, for 8 bars, and then go to ride cymbal. And to me, that sounded like a crazy idea. Like, why would I want to chop that up? And I went, okay, Brian, and then you do it, and then you listen to it, and you're like, well, damn, that's kind of got a thing, and that kind of gave two little scene changes to these to the bars to the ride out. And then we were doing "I Loves You, Porgy," somewhat traditionally. He even talks about this in his book, in his autobiography. And so I'm playing it jazz standards with brushes, and when it kind of goes into this instrumental bridge, Brian yells out, "Okay, at bar 47, I want everybody to stop. And Todd, drop the brushes and pick up Styx. And with 2 hands on both floor toms, give me quarter notes. Bam, 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 bam." And I thought, is this the moment he's finally gone mad?
Huh.
Okay, it'd be like if you were playing a wedding and you're doing, "I love you, Porgy." Don't, brushes, doo-doo. And now I'm hitting the floor times as hard as I can. Well, I do it, and after the fact, he had the percussionist overdub a cymbal swell and a thing like a glissando up with the strings. And damn it, wouldn't you notice? It was the coolest moment on the record. In a way, it became this thing. And every time he would make suggestions, I go, why do I think that's weird? Just do what the man says. He knows what's going on.
That's awesome, because I really wondered how hands-on he is
Totally.
all these years later.
No, he's totally he's making the calls. I've seen him dole out harmony parts to new pieces of music with everyone around the piano. And he'd be like, "Okay, Nikki, you sing this," and and okay, now you sing this, and it sounds like what people are moaning at a nursing home or something, and then all of a sudden he starts putting these parts, and it's like the sun poking through the clouds, and like that's the stuff that he hears in his head. It really is something to behold.
That's awesome. Well, he is on a short list of musical geniuses, and it's so cool you got to work with him and get to know him. That's
Yeah, it will be forever one of the jewels in the crown of my career.
What are a few of your favorites of his that he wrote, of his classics?
Oh boy, my goodness. Well, I mean, let's go back to the beginning, or near the beginning. "Don't Worry, Baby" is just one of the greatest songs ever. How can you feel bad? How can you be in a bad mood when that song is playing? Let's just jump to Pet Sounds. "God Only Knows."
Mega.
Is there a better song?
Not really.
I mean, it's profound and sublime, and it's
A lot
one
of
of the best
people
songs ever written. You can say that.
people don't get that record. It's always on the list of the 100 albums you should listen to before you die. And I think some rock people get a hold of it and they're just like, "Man, I get it. What's the big deal?" And it's just like, have you ever looked at a chart for these songs? Have you looked at the way the chords are put together? It's
Have you ever listened to
Alley
anyone
or something.
try to play those songs right? It's very few people really know what's going on with that stuff. I
And
mean,
his approach to drums is so different. It's like they hardly ever have a traditional role. There's like shakers and percussion and banging on a milk bottle and
well, it's very symphonic in that regard.
yeah,
And when I did um, That Lucky Old Sun, there's a bunch of things that aren't straight beats, and there's rallentandos where all of a sudden the tempo picks up, and then there's a decrescendo, and then we're back, and then just a snare drum, and you leave space for something that's going to be happening with a timpani or sleigh bells or whatever it's going to be. So he thinks very percussively. He doesn't like a lot of cymbals. He doesn't like a lot of wash.
sure.
So yeah, it's always a trip. It's always a trip to work with him. Yeah, lot of great memories, and just things like I remember recording Getting In Over My Head, and I had a Cliff Bar, if you know one of those things, this
Yeah.
big sort of power bar thing.
Yeah.
And Brian loves food, and I just came in, I took a bite, and Brian goes, "Oh, can I get a bite of that?" Like, sure. So I give it to him, and he's just like, takes this big giant crescent bite out of it and hands it back to me, and I just thought, all right,
You must be hungry.
yeah, let's listen to what we just did now.
You're feeling peppy after a bite of that. Okay, so I got a couple more questions. Some of my drummer friends are in the chat room. My friend Aaron says, "I have a question. Where did he get his ideas for his open drum tunings? It's very Simon Phillips-esque."
Well, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. Um, I would say someone like Simon and someone like Steve Smith. The sounds, the drum sounds on particularly Escape and Frontiers, reverby as they may be at times, or captured. There's only one way you can really get that sound, and that's by having really open sounding drums. Remo, clear ambassadors, top and bottom, nothing on them. You can always take away tone and sustain, but you can't add it if you don't have it. If your heads aren't delivering it, your tuning, and if you've got tape or gels all over everything, it's not going to sound like that. So um, I've always gravitated to that very open sound. I tune the bottom heads a little tighter than the top batter heads, and that kind of gives it a nice dip, like that doom doom doom
Oh yeah.
doom type of thing. And that just I can feel the vibrations of what's happening sonically coming off the drums and into the stick and into my hand. It's just what I've always gravitated towards.
And you use Remo? Is that your choice of heads as a rule? Okay, very cool. Any particular type? I know some have that like gel in them, and some are different.
No, no, open. Remo
Oh,
Clear Ambassadors. You can't get more ring tone, sustain, highs or lows out of any other drum head, but those, in my opinion, which I respect.
sure.
That's my favorite joke, by the way. Sorry.
Okay, so you use the Remos. Alrighty. Uh,
No, I'm going to say that again because that's such a great line. In my opinion, which I respect.
very
Sorry.
good.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, some other people. What a great interview for drummers, equipment, great stuff on head tuning. A big thank you, Todd.
Sure.
Alrighty. So I guess we should talk about Styx a bit. Well, obviously we've all been heard them since we were kids. I was wondering, what's your first memory of even hearing a Styx tune or any favorites from before you were ever in the band or anything?
I mean, I remember hearing Lady on the radio, and then I believe my older brother Paul had the 45 of that. Because that was really one of the first places where that song became a hit.
Hmm.
I can't remember if it was Larry Lujak, but one of the, excuse me, one of the DJs at I want to say it was WLS thought that Lady should have been a hit because it came out in 1972, and in 1974 the DJ said, "I'm going to play this song every night at 8 o'clock until this is a hit." So that really helped it spread in Chicago. And WLS was one of those radio stations where on a clear night you could, hear it in northern Wisconsin or in Iowa or in Missouri. It had a far reach back then. So that's really the first song that I remember hearing and knowing who they were. But it really wasn't until the Grand Illusion. Um, my uncle Dennis had that. We were visiting him in Arizona, and it had just come out, and he put on that record. And from that point on, it was like, oh yeah, I'm getting this record when I get home. Like that was the thing that solidified the fandom in me,
Oh
and I
yeah.
was for the ride ever since.
Yeah, well, it was a real treat to see you guys do that whole album along with Pieces of Eight. I think that was at Atlanta Cobb Energy Center, the giant symphony hall, kind of looking nicer than Symphony Hall, though. Yeah.
Yeah, that was that. We only did, I want to say like 24 days. That was one of my favorite tours ever. Was doing that one. There was a certain gravitas it felt playing Grand Illusion and then taking a break and then doing Pieces of Eight in its entirety. I mean, that was so much fun to do.
Yeah, it must have been fun to just dig into those deep cuts that you never had the pleasure of playing live,
Yeah, it,
alone.
it, it was. I mean, it's my hope that one day we can, well, not only tour again, but maybe do that again because we only did that. All the shows were east of the Mississippi. We never did any of those shows. I believe.
I'm sure the fans would eat that up no matter where you go. So that'd be great to get another round of that. And those, I guess, are two kind of the biggies. I mean, there's other albums you could cover, but those seem like the two obvious choices.
Well, it's the 1-2 punch that really put them into superstardom back then.
Yeah,
Multi-platinum.
I think Equinox would be kind of neat, but it's little old, not quite as well known. But there's some great stuff on that one, definitely. So I was wondering if we could talk a bit about the albums that you were part of with Styx.
Sure.
I have a little bit of a kind of PowerPoint presentation where we look at the album cover and talk about it. So let me fire that up here. Alrighty. So I guess tell us a bit about how you played on Lady, I believe uncredited, is that right? They did kind of a Lady 95 version. Was that the first thing you played on?
Yeah, that was really the beginnings of it for me, where apparently, well, A&M wanted to put out the definitive Styx greatest hits, and the first hit was on Wooden Nickel Records, and apparently at that time there was some issue with getting the sound recording rights, blah blah blah, whatever. So they decided, well, let's just record the song, re-record it.
Sure.
Uh, and at that time, apparently John Panazzo was in not excellent health and kind of couldn't physically play the drums. So they called a guy named Keith Marks, who Keith ran the big cartage company in town, and so he handled all the gear for all the musicians that were doing all the recording sessions in town. And Keith had worked with the band in the past. He'd worked with a couple of guys on their solo projects. So they called him and they said, "Who should we get?" So Keith said, "Oh, you got to call Todd Sucherman." So I got the call. Here's the gig. You were going to be playing Lady. So Keith picked me up in his big white, gear van, and we went down to Gary Loiza's place in Orland Park, Pumpkin Studios. Set up the kit, played the song. And, in my memory, I was sort of in and out of there in 90 minutes. Once you're done, like they were going to continue working. So it was like, well, great to meet you guys. I saw you guys 3 times as a kid growing up, whatnot. And then I was off.
So it was just like a session for you. You didn't really have any inkling that you would wind up in that band at the time.
No, that was in March of '95. That inkling didn't occur until when they called me again in February of '96, where they wanted to record a new. They had a couple new tracks that were going to be on Greatest Hits Part Two,
Oh, okay.
and this is a song called Little Susie. They actually got John to play on one song. Um, and then they called me in for Little Susie. And not that they weren't nice the first time, but there was much more of a get to know you sort of vibe, and asking me questions where I grew up, and engaging in conversation and asking all sorts of questions. And I got the sense that I was being sized up. Um, so I had some sort of notion that something was brewing here, and I said goodbye. I left, and in my memory, anyway, it was about 2 days later that JY, James Young, called me and said, "Hey, look, what are you doing this summer? Would you be interested in playing drums for a summer tour? Um, John's not well. If he gets better, the gig is his." And I said, "Oh, well, of course." Um, but he said, "Would you be interested in doing it?" And even though I was having a really great run in the recording studios, and it was like a lateral move financially, I had never had the experience of doing a big rock tour, much less with one band that I had all the records and saw as a kid growing up. So it was a no-brainer to say yes instantly. So that's how it all began.
Wow. Okay. And out of that tour, that reunion tour, that was a biggie because that was the first time Tommy had been back in quite a while too. Is that right?
Yeah, since '83.
I thought so. Yeah, that became the Return to Paradise album. I want to talk about your album though before we're done. So I will get back to that here in a minute. But yeah, Return to Paradise. This is the kind of live document of that particular tour as an album. I had this on VHS back in the day, and just a great, pretty much all the hits you would want to hear. And this was back when Dennis was with you. What was the vibe in the band like back then? I'm not digging for dirt or anything, but just a general overview.
You know, it's I was a newcomer, and I was an observer, and a hired guy. So the way I looked at it was, my job is to make these guys happy and be able to do their thing, and nobody worry about me. If I've got everything in control back here, then they can just concentrate on doing what they need to do musically and have a great time. So I very much focused on that. So any of the things that may have happened, if there were tensions or scenes or whatever, it was not it was not my tensions and it was not my scenes to deal with because I may as well have been, just a guy, cleaning up in the corner. That's how I viewed it. So, and from my perspective, I just knew that wanted to get through this experience, have fun, and I've always thought maybe something like this is never going to happen to me again. So enjoy it. Stop and smell the roses. And I literally firmly believe that at the end of the night of the very record that you have up there, which was recorded and filmed at the Rosemont Horizon, which is my dream venue to play. That's where I saw all the bands, growing up. So when I knew that all the gear and the drums and stuff were going to be delivered, back home in a day or two, but that was show number 72 of a 4-month wingding. And I cleaned out my wardrobe closet and I threw it in my Toyota Camry that I had back then. And I drove home and I walked into my apartment and it was like, did all that, can I swear on the show?
Yeah, we're all grown-ups.
Okay, so did all that shit just happen? It was like I left to play a wedding and I came back, 4 months later, except I had this experience. But when I said goodbye to those guys, I firmly thought I'm never going to see any of these people again. I thought that was a one-time deal.
Wow. Okay. A few more memories of this particular show. Anything come to mind, or this tour in particular, I guess?
Yeah, well, but this show is, I hate to be one of these guys, but it was not my best performance on the whole tour. I'd been healthy the whole tour, and a couple days before this, I got a cold, and I was still like, it was one of those things like, damn, it's the Chicago show, and I'm still,
Right.
So I feel there was a little bit of a cloud of that it was a bummer that I really had to rise to the occasion. And because of that, come on, man, you got to do it. Come on, you got to do it. Some of the tempos feel very on top to me. It's very hard for me to listen to. It was a great memory,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't listen to that and go, ah.
Wow.
I listen to that and it's like seeing a picture of you from high school and you're like, why the hell did I wear that?
Sure. Yeah, of the time. Well, I tell you, I mean, when me and my friends dug into this, we were just like, who is that drummer? Wow. This guy's got some
Thank you.
panache. This is what a,
That means a lot. So thank you.
yeah, absolutely. And it seemed like you added a little extra. It was like you were playing John's parts, but there's just a little extra flair in the mix, I guess, is how I would describe it. And
Well, I mean, certainly my view from back then, which I think certain elements have been pulled back, and I'd like to think that I have a more mature perspective now than I did then. But at that time, I'm sorry, I'm getting text here. At that time, I knew that I really wanted to take these guys and have it be like a new engine under the hood, and I wanted no one to think, oh, Styx, can they still play? I wanted to have just two shotguns constantly, blowing people's heads off. And I wanted to help facilitate that sort of energy and excitement. So when people saw the show, they were like, my God, I had no idea. I had no idea. So that's sort of what I was going for. I wanted to bring a ferocious energy to the table.
well, a job well done, my friend.
Thank you.
Definitely. Absolutely. Okay, so anyhow, this is a great memento from the time that Dennis was with you guys. I think just and the set list is killer. He played some great keyboards too. I know everybody thinks of him as a front man, but man, he had some chops. There's that Moog solo at the end of "Fooling Yourself." I mean, that would make Rick Wakeman blush. I think it's really killer stuff.
He was a highly talented man. I mean, one moment that I always got a buzz. I always loved playing the best of times with him. I think that's one of his most shining moments. And at the end, it was always I always felt a charge and sort of that okay, don't get so excited here that you blow the tempo. It still has to be back and fat. So
Yeah.
playing that and ending the show with that was always a powerful moment in my memory on that tour because again, you know, you'd be seeing grown men and women weeping in the first two rows because they thought they'd never see this band again. They thought they'd never hear that song again, and then they're seeing it, and it's clearly that's the end of the show, and they may never see it again. You know what I mean? That's what's going through their minds, and so it's a very emotional moment to be part of, and to be a conduit of, and to uh, witness. You know, and I'm fully aware that like it's I had nothing to do with it. I'm along for the ride. I have no misconceptions of my role here, but it was wonderful for an outsider to be in the middle of that on stage of this movie, seeing how the music affects people. Just tremendous.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. Big moment. Yeah. Well, that song takes me right back to the eighth grade dance. So I guess we all have our memories of it.
Mhm.
Alrighty. So next up, this is an actual studio album, Brave New World. Now, as I recall, this wasn't, it was kind of a mixture of like Tommy songs and Dennis songs and kind of put together to create one record. Am I right that it was more kind of independently done rather than the band in one room writing it together?
Yes. Again, I was a hired guy for this. So I just sort of went along with the program. Um, but there were certain things, I mean, I would see the writing on the wall. I mean, again, none of this is my uh, family battles to tell because it wasn't my battle. I was just a sort of an innocent bystander. But as I remember, Dennis refused to get on a plane and come to Los Angeles, where Tommy lived and I lived at the time. Um, and JY would fly out, no problem, and Dennis wouldn't leave his house, literally.
Hmm.
And then it got to the point where we were flying to Chicago and literally going to his house.
Wow.
And there was one night where Tommy and I flew in, and I'm like, back then, I was traveling with like a couple snare drums in a bass drum case that I'm ripping my shoulder out. I mean, I'm not even 30 yet, and this thing I can barely lift this thing, and I'm flying with all this stuff, and it's December, like December 10th, December 15th, something like that, and we're flying out, and rental car, and we're driving like an hour in through snow. It's like -6 out, staying at the Econo Lodge because that's the only hotel that's like near, his house. And Tommy and I pulled into a Burger King, and we're sitting there. I'll never forget this. We're sitting there, and there's Christmas music playing, and this Burger King in the middle of nowhere. It's pitch black. It's freezing, and we got our two little chicken sandwiches that are like totally smashed and look nothing like the professional photos.
Sure.
So we're eating these sad chicken sandwiches in this sad empty Burger King with the Christmas music playing, and we looked at each other and we burst out laughing. We didn't even have to say, "What the hell are we doing here?" We just started laughing like like we were high and couldn't stop laughing like a laughing fit. We just realized how stupid this is. But we did it. We did it, and we did it again and again and again. And I recorded all the drum tracks except one there at Gary Loizo's in the dead of winter, flying in and going through this thing. It's 10 degrees outside, and I did my parts, and I was happy to be playing on a record with Styx. But what was going on between those guys, I was not there for a lot of it, but it was pretty clear that that's when a big division had occurred in direction and just how to do this. And then the whole thing of we had a record label that was paying for this, and they expected a tour. A tour was set up, and that's when Dennis said that he didn't want to do it, or didn't want to do it then. So
Tell me a bit about the songs. Are there any tunes here that kind of stand out to you now?
Boy, I haven't listened to this in a long time.
It seems like one that kind of just falls between the cracks in the discography. So,
Everything is cool. I liked it. It was always fun to play live. Uh, um, I Will Be Your Witness, I thought was a cool departure. The first track on there, that was really fun to play. Um, mm, mm, mm. The track Brave New World, I always really liked that one, and we played that one live in 2000.
okay.
So it's I mean it clearly there's hills and valleys, there's sonic differences, and you know it was what it was, quite frankly, and
Yeah,
that's how it had to be. It wasn't going to be any other way than that.
it's not bad. I think it sounds more like Styx than the previous album, Edge of the Century, which just kind of sounded of the times to me. But that's just my opinion. Alrighty. Now this one, I'm sure you had a much bigger hand in. Um,
Well, this was the only record where we all were in Los Angeles and we all got in a room and we all looked at each other until someone had something. Whether it came out of a jam or someone had a nugget for an idea or someone had a chorus or someone had a riff. We put all these songs together um, in rehearsal rooms in Los Angeles, and then recorded it at Capitol, the drums and the piano, and I think some guitars, and then most of it was done at Tommy's studio. So that was a great experience. I mean, there's many different ways to make a record. One is someone takes the lead and has ideas, and then there's sitting in a room looking at each other who's got an idea, and
sure.
that could be a laborious way of going about it. Where there's all sorts of compromises going on. Well, how about this? How about this? And then how about this to the point where all of a sudden none of this is working. You got to go back to the original idea. But one thing I do remember is we had all these different sections for One with Everything, and I remember that there was a white marker board in the hallway of this rehearsal room. So I pulled that in. I'm like, okay, we have these sections. And I started trying to arrange what should go from here to here to here. And then, we're going to repeat this. So the first couple times we played that, we were all looking at the marker board. And that's how we put that behemoth together.
That's totally legit. I've got a proggy band myself with tunes that sometimes reach 10 minutes. And boy, trying to arrange some of those things, it's just like, wow, these could go in so many different orders. So the whiteboard is very helpful when you're going for these kind of epic things. I mean, I know for some people, they just kind of fall out and complete, but for mere mortals like myself, sometimes I got to hammer it into shape over the course of months.
There's many different ways to make the sausage.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is Hypnosis did the cover for this, right? The same people that did Dark Side of the Moon and
Well, Storm Thorgerson did it.
Storm. Okay, it's like half that team, basically. And what's the carrot a metaphor for? Is it the whole, dangling a carrot in your face kind of thing, or what?
To be honest, it was never explained to me, and I think the fact that it could mean a myriad of things. I wouldn't want to ruin it for someone who has their own notion. I think it's all valid, and uh, one thing that I think that was cool was having that icon, and that was the first time I thought, I'm putting the big carrot on my bass drums, and then people started to go, oh, I get it, carrot sticks, right? And I'm like,
Oh, wow.
no, no,
That didn't cross my mind, no.
no, that is not. I would not commit to something that unfunny.
Right, exactly. Um, well, so tell me a bit, what are some other tracks that stand out? I mean, One with Everything seems to be the biggie on here, but there's a lot of good stuff on this one.
I was really proud of this record. all the way through. I think "Waiting for Our Time" was a great song, and another dimension that I think that would have been a hit. Um, the song "Together" is a really nice, kind of good feeling song. And Tommy's vocals on that were just beautiful. Um, uh, I think "These Are the Times" is arguably my favorite James Young vocal song of them all.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a
Uh,
great tune. Um, uh, More Love for the Money, I said, is the greatest Dennis song Dennis never wrote. What do you think of that?
Uh, yeah, I think it has more Queen leanings than Dennis leanings, really.
Okay. I kind of got that Broadway kind of show tune vibe from it to some.
Yeah, next time you hear that, think Queen,
Okay.
which I guess is, depending on how you look at it, isn't that far away from some Broadway moments, but um, chordally, there's a lot of interesting things that are happening in that one that are um, there's some darkness to it.
Yeah.
To paraphrase uh, a quote from one of my old band members who actually just texted a minute ago, Alan Keller from the Falling Walendas. It's like a Twinkie with a formaldehyde center.
Well, I think most of them have that, right? Because the shelf life is like 100 years. So it could very well be. Alrighty. So tell me about this one. This was a cover album, correct?
Correct.
What inspired that, and how did you choose the songs?
Well, how this came about was actually pretty interesting because at the time, in the wake of Cyclorama, no radio station would play it. I mean, that was part of the reason people go, "I've never heard of the record." Well, it never, well, yeah, you didn't, because no radio station would play it at all. Because at that time, no classic rock radio would play anything new.
Nope, nope. They had to play "Come Sail Away" for the millionth time instead.
And any new rock was playing whatever was like the new rock thing, Creed or whatever was happening in 2002, 2003, right?
Hmm.
So they weren't going to touch us. So it really fell through the cracks, that record. So, but still touring, you're doing radio interviews with radio people all the time. And I forget who it was. It may have been JY. Well, it came from, we were invited to play Eric Clapton's Crossroads in Dallas in 2004, but not like sort of one of the outdoor afternoon things, not in the main thing where they always had, John Mayer and whatever, and Jeff
Right.
Beck. But we did play it outside with thousands and thousands of people. And the idea was not to play Styx because we'd literally just played a Styx show in Dallas like a week before.
Okay.
So we decided to do like some blues stuff, some covers. Skunk Baxter sat in with us,
Oh,
and
nice.
he did uh, "I Am the Walrus"
Uh-huh. Yeah, you did a vid for that too.
for whatever reason, and we had so much fun playing it. And I thought that we just played the shit out of it so well that we started doing it in the set. And I think it may have been Greg Salk at the Loop said, "Well, if you get me a live recording of that, like I'll play that. Like that I'll play. No one will play new music from a classic band, but if you do new music from a classic band, that's maybe we'll play that." So that's what happened. We did a live recording from I think Lincoln, Oregon, of "I'm the Walrus," and all of a sudden, radio stations across the country were playing it, and it got to be number two on classic rock radio behind the almighty U2 without a record, without a saleable item behind it. So the record company was like, covers record, covers, you could do a covers record now.
Right.
That's what we did, and we had a whole pool of songs. The notion was all the songs had to be music that was a direct influence on all of us growing up. So we
Okay.
all kind of had little picks in there.
Okay. What did you throw on the pile?
I'm sure it had to be "I Could See for Miles,"
Oh,
who,
Love
I
the
mean, the Beatles are already spoken for, um, but I would say that that was probably my call.
Who. Oh yeah,
Um,
great, great. I love the Who. They're like the first band I ever loved.
you know,
So
and you know, an interesting thing as a musician, there are certain things that, again, going back to there's a song I didn't like, and now I love it. Like I remember the Allman Brothers song, One Way Out. I'm like, ugh, I was like so not into that.
right,
But and then I listened to it, and it's like there's two drummers, and it sounds like everyone's kind of hammered, and but it had a thing. It just wasn't my thing. But Tommy's from Alabama. That song meant something to him, so I gotta grow up, get over it, man up, and be a professional, right? Love playing that song. Love playing that song, and got a drumless mix of that and played that at drum clinics and on one of my drum DVDs. I learned to love something that I previously had not cared for at all. So that's a learning thing or by keeping your mind open because you never know when all of a sudden you really might dig something. Summer in the City, Tommy's vocals on that, get out.
yeah.
Fantastic. I remember he came in after singing that. I gave him a hug. I'm like, dude.
His voice is just so timeless. Does he do anything special to kind of keep it preserved in amber, so to speak?
Yes, he keeps working. He
Just
keeps
keep
working
using it, right? Yeah,
himself in shape. You know, that's it. I mean, he's never been better than he is right now at what 65, I think.
yeah, it's amazing.
He's never sounded better than he does right now. And there's not a lot of people that you could say that about.
No, well, at this time period, you're kind of watching a lot of your classic rock heroes atrophy. So it's refreshing and really nice when some don't.
Well, here's the thing. Well, first off, pleasing all the people all the time in showbiz has never been accomplished by anybody ever. But
Right.
having said that, when people say like, "Well, why you guys work so much?" Well, what should I just lie by the TV and get fat?
Yeah, if you can go,
Like, if we've worked our whole lives at a skill, let's do that. And the reason why this band is able to bring so much heat when we play is because we do it all the time.
oh yeah,
You
you
want,
guys are a well-oiled machine.
take 10 years off and then go back for a reunion. See how that goes.
Yeah,
I mean, look, I love Phil Collins. I love him. One of the most important writers, drummers, singers to me. And it's like, well, you took a lot of time off, and even in 2007, like you think you can play the drums on Duke's Travels and the stuff that you did when you're 26, when you haven't done that for years, you can't. You
yeah. Well,
can't get back in the ring. It's
well, you can kind of see it on his face in the video too, where he's kind of like, ah, as he does a fill.
I love him. I adore him. I wish for him nothing but the best. But this is one of the things that we subscribe to, that we keep doing it until life makes us unable to do it. And that's the thing that, with this pandemic that I'm most concerned about, is because we were always never had more than a month off. And now to have this amount of time off at our increasing ages, even with me being the youngest, I know getting back on the horse is going to feel differently now than if COVID never happened and we continued and we'd just be where we were.
Sure. Yeah. Well, hopefully the rust will shake off quickly, or there won't be much. All righty. So you guys have done a lot of live albums, and I didn't want to include them all because it's a little redundant, but this one's kind of special, I think. The whole show you did with the Contemporary Youth Orchestra and that big medley. I was curious how you guys came to put that together and how you decided what went in it, and if anything almost made it but didn't at the last minute because it just didn't mesh well. And just the way everything segues, how much thought was put into that? Was it like, hey, that one's in C and this one's in C, let's put those back to back? Or anyway,
Well, I was actually the one that arranged this, and
thought you might have been.
this was the result of uh, naivete of trying to please everybody all the time. Back in 2002, when the internet was still sort of new, and then you'd uh, um, fall into message boards, and I wish they played this. I wish they played this. So I thought, okay, I'm going to arrange a medley. Now, what you have on this record is mildly different than what we toured playing 3 years. There was some issue with publishing on one or two songs from a former band member, so we had to uh, change the arrangement just for this night and just for this recording. So, but beside the point, one lazy Sunday afternoon, I put together a DAT tape back then of sections that I thought would work. And it wasn't done on the computer, and there were little gaps. And I remember playing it for everyone, and they all looked at me like, I had six heads. I'm like, trust me, this is going to work. And I kind of kept at it, like, can we try this? Can we try this? And it was fun to see as we put this together, the light bulbs going off in everyone's heads. Like, this is cool. There's a lot to remember, a lot of segues. And then when we started doing it, it was fantastic. Loved it. And then, of course, half of it was I love the medley, and then half of it were people bitching. Well, I wish they only did 16 bars of this song, or I wish they did the whole thing. Like, okay, there we go. Lesson learned. Can't please all the people all the time. Right. I keep reminding myself and learning that lesson over and over again. But it was really, really fun to do. And I think after 3 years of doing it, they were just tired of playing something like 18 songs in 14 minutes.
Is it my imagination, or was Light Up in that medley, but not on the night you played with the teenagers?
I don't remember what
I'm
was.
wondering if maybe you guys cut it because of the subject matter and all that.
No, no. I mean, I think there was some issue with maybe Mr. Roboto.
All right. Yeah,
And
Mr. Roboto, that's one that you guys actually dusted off in the past year after.
well, we always did the intro in the middle of the medley. I remember the Domo Arigato, Mr. Roboto. That section went into the beginning of Rockin' the Paradise, which went into the piano, the classical piano bit of Pieces of Eight. Um,
Were there ever songs in the medley where people just kind of went batshit when you got to that, and you guys are kind of like, we really need to dust this whole song off later?
well, every one, it'd be like a couple people over here freaked out at this one, then a couple people over here freaked out at that one. I mean, that was always the case, and it was always a juggernaut to play. I loved doing it, and a bunch of those songs, because of doing it, like ended up getting dusted off and getting uh, danced in and out of the set over the years that followed.
Yeah, I was wondering just how much you guys change it up, because I figure you've got probably about 10 songs that you have to play every night. So that doesn't give you a whole lot of room for other things. So,
Again, it depends on the venue. It depends on on the time allotted playing. Sometimes like people don't realize, like when you play casino gigs, which are great gigs, by the way.
yeah,
For a while it seemed to be like, oh, they're playing casinos. Like, gee, all the casinos I'm playing at, there's posters for Sting, Steely Dan, The Who. Nothing to be like, oh, they're playing casinos. It's not like it was it was in the old days.
no,
Anyway, but most of these casinos, they want a 90-minute show. They don't want 1 minute more because, let's face it, we're cannon fodder. Any band is cannon fodder to get people in that building and to be spending their money at the tables.
gambling. Yeah.
That's the reason for the season there. So they don't want us to be like, oh, it's just a night with Styx. Let's play a 2 hour and 20 minute show. Let's play. They mandate they do not want that. We want 90 minutes, not 91 minutes. You want to play 88 minutes, that's fine. But 90 minutes is what the contract is.
All right.
So, and goodbye.
Sure. Okay. Well, still, you guys still do some shows with the orchestra occasionally, am I right? Or was this a one-off kind of thing?
Well, that was a
With the orchestra.
one-off with the youth orchestra, but Liza Grossman, who was their director until recently, she's our conductor for any symphony show that we've done afterwards, which would have been Jacksonville, Atlanta, um, uh, Denver, and Nashville.
She seems like a really neat lady. I got
She's awesome.
I got to say, and it's just the fun the kids are having. I mean, I've got lots of DVDs of bands playing with symphonies, and usually the symphony just looks like they're bored out of their skull. But boy, what a fun show you guys had.
It was a very memorable night, very stressful for me because I had to hold everybody together and it was being recorded and filmed. So I was relieved at the end. But it was an exhilarating night, and I think it came off um, on recording and certainly on film on the DVD. Um, just great. I received a lot of correspondence where people were very emotional and they said it made them cry.
Yeah, it's really great. It's my favorite of your live ones for sure. Okay, my friend Derek, my old drummer from my band about 15 years ago, says, "Are there any new songs that were started off by an idea that you brought to the table?" And I'll kind of segue to the most recent album because I think that might have been where it would have happened if it did.
I have a very unsatisfactory answer for that. This was a record that very much Tommy was inspired and began writing with Will Evankovich, and then Lawrence was pulled in. So this was very much a record that Tommy took the reins and drove the ship. The only thing that sort of started from this was from my perspective, was All Systems Stable, which is an 18-second song where I thought like it'd be cool. Let's have like a soundscape segue in between tracks with my newly acquired water phone that I was in love with. So I used the water phone with a mallet and also a violin bow to make those kind of creepy sounds. And if you don't know what the water phone is, you've heard it in 1,000 horror movies. It creates that. Well, you want me to get it?
Yeah, yeah, you've got my curiosity piqued. Yeah,
Pardon me, I'm over here getting the water phone.
the water phone.
So there's no water. There's no water in it presently, which would
Is it by the water cooler?
bend the pitch, but it's.
Oh, hold on. Let me get out of this presentation so we can get a better look. Hold on a second here. On it. Yeah, I remember those now. Okay. So that's very cool. Wow. I've never seen that. That is awesome, man. And it doesn't look anything like what I imagined when you called it a water phone.
No, it sort of looks like the World Series trophy.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Very cool. How about on Cyclorama? Were there any on there that started out with an idea you threw in the pile?
I don't really remember. Some things came just from jamming on grooves, or whether I started playing a groove, or it's. But there's nothing I can claim like, oh, that was me. I did that one.
Right.
We all came up with things together, just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what stuck.
Sure. Okay. Just a couple more things about the mission before I wrap up our little slideshow here. Any standout tracks for you on this one? Any favorites?
I think the Red Storm is the one with everything from this record.
Okay.
I think that's a great song. I love playing that live.
I think this album really hangs together as one cohesive statement.
I agree.
More so than Cyclorama, which seemed like a bit of a kind of mix and matched affair.
Well,
But
I
that
mean,
worked. That
I,
worked.
I, I can't speak for Tommy, but I think that's sort of what he had in mind. He all of a sudden got inspired with a whole bunch of things at once, and when that happens, you just have to start documenting it. You can't control when inspiration comes, you know. And so this just happened, and then I think that he started to see this cohesive idea as opposed of as opposed to like, okay, everyone's going to sing two or three songs and we're going to kind of split this up and who's got what. It was, this was his vision. So when a man is inspired, roll with it.
Sure. Well, I think it turned out great, and I've heard nothing but good word about it. So,
To,
job
to,
well done, Tommy.
to me, the greatest thing, if I may, and I hope this doesn't come off in a weird way, but I loved that I never read a bad review of this record, whether it was Joe's blog on the internet or like a legit publication. I never read a bad one, and I know that people who would normally love to just rip the hell out of the band, this was a juicy watermelon for them to hit with a baseball bat. Styx doing a space exploration concept record in 2017, they couldn't wait to rip it to shreds, and then they didn't, because I think the work speaks for itself. There's one review started just like that: Styx, space exploration. There's nothing about this that should work, and yet it does. And I'm like, thanks for being honest.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, that's a rarity these days on the internet. So kudos. So let's talk a bit about your record. This is your first solo album, Last Flight Home, and this came out, I think, in May this year. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Well, tell us about the genesis of it and how it came together.
The whole thing was really sort of a.
And I should say, this isn't your typical drummer record.
No.
It's just a great collection of really great melodic songs.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, there's great drumming on it, but it isn't one of these, oh, look at me kind of things. It's not like that.
No, I mean, I think the fact that most people might expect some sort of drum-centric or fusion record from me, and the fact that this is more of a, it's a sophisticated pop. If you like Crowded House, Jellyfish, XTC, Elbow, you might like this. You might like, if you like those types of bands and that type of thing, you might like this. And that's the stuff that I tend to gravitate towards mostly in my life anyway. So in that respect, it's very true to me, even though it might not be what most people would expect. J.K. Harrison is an old buddy of mine who's a prolific writer and musician I worked with in the old days, had been hounding me for years about doing a record with him where I was the singer. And I always thought he was nuts. I'm like, like, dude, it's sweet that you think that I could do this, but no way. And he'd be like, you can, and you should, and you will. Yeah, well, thank you very much. Just the way like a little kid would sit and think, gee, I wish I could be an astronaut, or gee, I wish I could be a major league ball player. I would have loved to have been a singer and a writer, and I just didn't think that I had the goods. But he believed in me when I didn't, and he hit me just at a certain time where I was going to be, it's in Los Angeles now, where I was going to be in Los Angeles for like just a little over a week with a couple nights off and a couple days off. And I thought, okay, what the hell? Let's get together. What's the worst that could happen? We're going to have a bunch of laughs, have a few drinks, and I'll visit with my friend. But it all came together extraordinarily quickly. And by the second day, we wrote the song Last Flight Home together in like 20 minutes. It was like one of those lightning rounds where it was just friggin' magic. Like, if it were only that you all the time, I mean, I even said at one point, I'm like, hey, songwriting's fun. And then there's the times where you're like this for like 2 hours. But it just came together so organically and quickly. And I just saw this yellow brick road materialize in front of me. And I thought, holy smokes, am I really going to do this? Am I going to get out from behind the drums and sing? That's as vulnerable as just the dream that you have when you're a kid and like, I'm standing in front of the class in my underwear.
Sure.
It terrified me. It terrified me. And
do you sing backup with Styx?
Yeah, I'm very comfortable doing that behind all the wood and metal.
Right.
And behind guys that I consider excellent singers. But I got to hand it to JK. Not only did he give me the confidence, he made me believe in myself, and he also taught me how to do it. As we were going. And, there's, it felt right. And the fact that I was so scared about this, I thought, this is what I should be doing. This is where I should be doing, and not doing putting together a fusion record that only like maybe 100 people are gonna like, or ever listen to. To me, the hardest thing about music is good melodies and good lyrics and putting them together in a believable way. I could come up with all day long and play drum fills before that. But that's not what I wanted to do at this point. But if I could come up with music that actually meant something to someone on a deep emotional way, the way that a song with melody and lyrics does, that's what I wanted to attempt to do. And the correspondence I received from it has been so beautiful. And I was terrified. I'll never forget the first few people that I played it for, because every second seemed like an hour. But their response was they couldn't believe it. So I thought, okay, maybe I have something here. And the goal was to have every sound, every lyric, every moment for me be able to stand behind and go like, you might not like it, but you can't say that it's bad.
No.
You might not, nobody likes everything, but I wanted to be proud of every second of this 40-minute record.
Well, I think you have good reason to be. I think it turned out beautifully,
Thank you, man.
and I was just kind of surprised it was the first one that you had done. So I hope there's more to come.
Well, I mean, I never knew I was going to do this one, so I kind of like living like that. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, literally, if you had told me 2 years ago that I'm going to have a record where I was the singer, I would have thought you had mental issues.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I have wondered, have you ever done like a prog fusion kind of record? Because your style, I think, would work well in that context. I've compared you to a couple modern prog drummers that people talk about a lot, and the Marco Miniman and Gavin Harrison. I'm sure you're familiar with those guys, and I think you're right up there. So,
Well, I'm friends with both of those guys. There's a record called "Life Is a Killer" by Finally George. It's a guy out of Germany. Check that record out. That's if you like the Pink Floydness of Porcupine Tree. It's sort of that type of vibe.
okay.
It's one of my favorite records I've ever done. "Life Is a Killer" by Finally George. I played on a couple of the Legacy Pilots records with Mark Usbin, the other drummer.
Yeah, my good friend Jake Liveren's on some of that.
Okay, yeah. He and I are in a song together. I never met him, but
Well, hopefully that'll happen sometime.
a different league. I think that's the one that we're on together.
Yeah, I think Jordan Rudess is on that as well.
Correct. So there's that. I did, 2 years ago now, Antoine Fafard record, Boromir and Odyssey, which is a jazz fusion, but it's structured like progressive rock songs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all instrumental, but that was some of the most challenging music I ever had to learn and perform. That was crazy hard, and that was just Antoine on bass guitar, excuse me, and the great Gary Husband on keyboards, who's also a brilliant drummer. He's a brilliant keyboard player as well.
He's brilliant at everything he does.
And there's a record, a guy in Australia, Zan, spelled Tzan, Zan Niko, Niko, a record called Ascension. That he's a guitar hero guy, but beautiful compositions, great playing, and different kinds of stuff on there. So it's not all just ripping your face off.
Right.
I'm on 9 of 11 tracks on that one, and that was one of my favorite records to
Are
do.
you open for studio work? Like if somebody came to you and said, "Todd, play on my record."
Yes. Yes.
Good. Okay. Yes. So what's the best way to get a hold of you in that, if they wanted you to play on something?
I believe there's contact information at toddsucherman.com.
Okay.
You can get a hold of me there, and thankfully, many sessions have come in. I always would like more, but I'm so grateful for the ones that have come in that have kept me busy. And there's been a lot of challenging music to learn and record and send to various parts of the globe and go, okay, and it's a great way to make friends. There's nothing like playing together in a room, but it's a great way to make friends. Case in point, I mean, I worked really hard with finally George and with Frank from the Legacy Pilots, and those guys are friends. And when we played Europe the summer before last in 2019, those two guys and their wives flew up to Oslo, where I met them for the first time, and we had a night off in Oslo, and went and had dinner and drinks until till late, and then I hooked them up with the show, and we're friends for life now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think you're not alone. I think there's a lot of guys that are kind of doing studio work on the side. You mentioned Jellyfish. I interviewed Roger Joseph Manning Jr. not long. He's been on the show a couple times, and yeah, he's kind of in the same situation where I'm for hire. Just give me a buzz. And it's funny because one of his first concert was Chicago as well, and he
Oh,
saw them the last show that Terry Kath played, which
wow.
was kind of a mind blower for them. He said, a couple months later we heard about him and they were like, gosh, we saw the last one.
You know what? I mean, I don't know when mine was, but that was July of '77, and I think it was January of '78.
Yeah. So yeah, you guys both kind of saw him around the same time there. So cool. That was a great tour. Anytime they play that whole ballet for Girl from Buchanan, I'm a happy guy.
That's one of my favorite pieces of music
Oh
in the
man,
world.
I just think that's their greatest moment, and it's all kinds of great moments for them. But yeah, what's your of the later Chicago albums? Any favorites?
Um, there's a couple things I really like on was it the Thumbprint record? Is that 13?
That's 14. That's like the most overlooked one in the catalog in a
Yeah,
way.
that's the last time I saw them, and that would have been Poplar Creek in the summer of '81.
Okay. Yeah, they had that guitar player they had, Chris Pinnock was
Yeah,
smoking. I
yeah.
wish we could have heard more from him. Because he was Terry Kath caliber. I think the guy they had right after Terry passed away was good, but he wasn't quite the crazy shredder we were used to. So I think
Well, I don't know the guy, but I remember as a kid, there was a concert on TV, and I just thought that the showmanship was a little bit much for stepping in to like a legend that had passed.
yeah,
Um,
kind of like lay back, buddy.
just a little bit, but it's okay. But I mean, he did the gig. He
Yeah.
got the gig,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I can't remember his name now. Well, anyhow, so I guess we should probably wrap it up. Where's the best place to get your album at?
Well, the best place, really, the only well, one of the only places to get a physical copy, if you're still into physical copies, would be at toddsucherman.com. I mean, I think Amazon might have them in CD Baby, um, but that would be the best place. The limited edition vinyl is sold out, which is very very cool. I don't know if you're a vinyl guy at all, um, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
am. All kinds of stuff.
well,
As a matter of fact, usually on Saturday nights when I do my show at my usual 10 o'clock spot, I have a section called My Vinyl Confessions where I pick 10 albums and I hold it up and tell you why I think you should own it. All that kind of jazz.
that to me was one of my uh, things that I'm most grateful for that I finally bought and set up right before the pandemic was a record player. I hadn't had one in decades, and I kept all my vinyl. I bought a whole bunch of new stuff, and I'm not going crazy overboard, but I like how it infiltrates the room differently, and I like showing my daughter this is music. Music's not just something that you conjure out of the air, like
Right. It's not just a file.
and the now playing stand, and so she knows like that's Van Morrison and that's Marvin Gaye and that's Peter Gabriel. Like making that connection, I think, is important rather than just invisible songs. Oh, I like this one. I like this one.
Right, right. Just getting a look at that album art and just kind of soaking it all up. Yeah. I was like that too. I went straight CDs and got rid of my record player, but I kept my records. And about 10 years ago, I was just like, I'm going to break these out and see if they sound better than the CDs. And a lot of them did. And just the whole kind of ritual of going to the store and digging through the bins and finding all these nuggets, that's a fun. That's about the only time I get out of the house this year is when I go buy records.
And that's the thing. Like when the storm is over, I know I'm going to have some fun doing that.
Oh,
because I never had that experience as, I did when I was a kid, but now it's kind of a different, it's a different thing.
no, it'll take you back. You'll feel like you're 15 again, digging through all those.
Well, here's the thing, like vinyl people know this, and it's what I'm gonna say. People are gonna go, duh, but it was something that hit me was pulling out my quadrophenia.
Oh,
That's the one that I listened to in the bedroom of the house I grew up in, I mean, eighth grade and dealing with, being 12 and, going through puberty or whatever. That it's not like, hey, Alexa, play, Sea and Sand. Like those are the exact friggin' grooves that I heard that comforted me and consoled me then. That's what I'm hearing. And now I'm sitting with my daughter and she's hearing it. A couple times I kind of broke into tears because that hit me. That's the actual one. It's like looking at the actual photograph of, like, here's a photograph of you and your grandpa or something like that.
right.
It took me totally by surprise.
I know how that is. I have a few from, one of my earliest memories was working the record player. And my older brother, who is 16 years older than me, was bringing home, the first two Chicago albums, that Blood, Sweat, and Tears one, with the red fade and they're all standing on the cover. Love that. But Tommy was the one album that I just dug out of there. And I was like, you know, I've told this story before, but as a kid, I had a book from Dr. Seuss called Horton Hears a Who about the elephant.
Sure.
And, on the cover it just says Tommy the Who. So I just assumed it was about a who named Tommy. I didn't know any better. And it's just as well because it's not a really kid friendly story anyway. But
No,
there's just something about that music. And I still have that dog eared copy all these years later.
that's your Tommy.
Yeah,
That's the one. When
that,
you drop the needle on that, that's the same one
yeah,
from then.
that
And
same
and
Decca record label and everything. I
that
actually thought,
it was entirely lost on me. Like the notion of that was entirely lost on me.
yeah, it's some of my fondest childhood memories. It's like I didn't even want to listen to my kiddie records. It was just like, let me put on that Who album. That's the stuff. So big connection just from the get go. Sometimes it's just like that. You just instantly hear it, and it's like I identify with this. I love it. So, anything you want to share with our audience before we wrap it up today, Todd?
Everybody, stay safe. I'm not gonna try to. It's not my place to suggest anyone how they should live their lives, but let me just say, stay safe. It's gonna be it's gonna be brutal for a couple months. So stay safe and don't do anything that you don't have to do. That's my suggestion.
I agree.
And
Right.
because when we get on the other side of this, we're gonna party like MFers. I'm gonna hug all my friends. I'm gonna cry. It's gonna be great, and I want everyone to be there when the storm is over. So don't be stupid. Be smart. Do the right thing.
There was a reason the 20s roared 100 years ago, and it's because they just got over a pandemic and they were ready to throw down. So this is almost a repeat of that in some ways. So I hope everybody. And I should ask, any new Styx music on the horizon?
Yes.
Do tell.
I'm not sure that I'm totally at liberty to tell, but my parts are done. The record's been recorded, uh,
Wow, sounds promising.
and it's. I'm going to be again fiercely proud of this one, but it will see the light of day when it's totally done and when we're able to go out and play
Is it
again.
another concept or is it just a collection of songs?
Um, I'll leave that for the listeners to decide
So we'll
when
say maybe.
time. I mean, it's you could construe, you could run some strings through some things, but no one's ever sat down and explained an idea to me. I will say this: I know there's a couple songs on there that were written before the pandemic, and they sound as if they were ringing true to what's happening in the world right now. Um, there's one called "Sound the Alarm." I'll even give it a song title. That as I was preparing to record it, Rich, I recorded the record here in June. Uh, I'm listening to the lyrics, and I stopped playing, and I damn near burst into tears because it was such an emotional thing that has to do with what was going on in the world right now. Yet it was written a few months before this plague, swarmed planet Earth. So
Mm.
we'll see. But I think it's as strong as anything the band's ever done.
That's awesome. Well, that'll give folks something to look forward to. I'm sure next year it'll come out sometime. So we'll be looking
Hopefully,
forward to that.
hopefully so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Todd, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope we can catch up next time you guys come to town. Me and Scotty, I'll come pester you, and
Give him my best, will you?
I will. I will always.
All right.
Alrighty, y'all. Take care. Tomorrow night at my usual 10 o'clock time spot, I am chatting with Randy McStein, who just made another album with Marco Miniman. McStein Miniman. If you like the first one, this new one's going to blow you away. It is twice as good. And
Right.
the first one was excellent. So yeah, look out. It's just these songs are chock full of surprises and Zappa-esque flourishes and all kinds of cool stuff. So, all right, Todd. Well, take care.
Cheers, Sean. Stay
All right,
safe. All right.
my best to Taylor,
We'll
and
do.
y'all take care. All right,
Better, better.
all right. Bye bye.